That's it.
The next item we'll be bringing up is House Bill 1322 by Representative Kaufer. Motion to bring this legislation up. I'll bring the bill up, seconded by Representative Topper. On the bill in chief, Representative Kaufer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1322 amends the Public Welfare Code primarily to disclose applicants where they've resided in the past 5 years if they've collected another form of public assistance in another state. And also that DHS must notify the surroundings, the other states in the change of residency. Currently, we don't have any laws on the books in the Public Welfare Code in regard to notifying other states of the change of residency of applicants. This is prompted from an audit done by the Auditor General, former Auditor General Jack Wagner, in September of 2011. And going through, there is information that I provided to some of our committee members in the packets that in his statement, and I'm going to quote him here, while senior management at DPW did not address these deficiencies, we are also disappointed that the Pennsylvania General Assembly has been less than diligent in its oversight role. It goes on to go through several of these points, but overall, there's over $5 million per month, $5 million per month spent outside the state of Pennsylvania in regard to these programs. As part of going through this, there were suggestions made that we should work on, and I'm going to quote him here, to develop, and once again I'm quoting, develop reciprocal agreements with surrounding states to better monitor programs and make certain double dipping of benefits does not exist. So this is in a way to make sure that we are working with our surrounding states and partnering with them so that if somebody cannot collect in multiple states. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Representative Chairman Fabrizio.
Just would like to remind the members of the committee that this report was issued before Act 22 of 2011, which hopefully has resolved a lot of the problems contained in that report.
Representative Daley.
I'll wave off. That was actually part of my question. Thanks.
Representative Dawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. There's got a few questions. One, we are quoting the audit. I don't have a copy of it, so please forgive me if I don't know. How many cases have we had that we have seen, in your words, the double dipping?
In 1 month, in the month of May 2010, 94,947 transactions were done outside the state, totaling over $5 million in a single month.
So when you say transaction outside the state, meaning they were collecting general assistance outside the state and collecting general assistance within the state?
Unfortunately, in the audit, actually, DPW was not did not provide the information, so they could not actually guarantee the people, and that's part of this audit as well, was that DPW, now DHS, was not forthcoming with that information, so they could not confirm using forensic auditing on what was fraudulent and what wasn't. So part of this is to make sure that we are following up and doing our due diligence. Right now, there is no law on the books in this regard, and we're not aware of what we can do because there isn't practices like this in place.
So during the process in which someone is moving into the state and they're applying for general services, do they have to wait the applicant in order for the state to either confirm that that individual was receiving subsidies in the other state? My main question, is there a delay in that individual receiving services from Pennsylvania with the actual process in which we got to contact the other state that they are coming from?
It's being deferred to me. There is a period of time when an individual is supposed to be a resident. There's a few ways to get around that. This piece of legislation would not change the time frame. It actually just creates a duty for DHS to provide information back to the other state that the individual is collecting public public assistance here in the Commonwealth. If the DHS does not make that report back, so I'll use an example, the person moves down from New York and is living here in the Commonwealth, they have to notify New York that the individual is now collecting general assistance here in the Commonwealth. But if DHS does not, it does not make the individual ineligible, nor does it add any additional time for the individual, any delay for the individual to start collecting assistance here in the Commonwealth. It is currently an internal practice of DHS to do this. It's part of the federal fraud, waste, and abuse provisions that they're looking at. This would simply codify it. And I don't know if the representative mentioned this. The reason for the codification is this is the first step in an interstate compact where multiple states will participate in this information sharing, not intended to prevent individuals from collecting assistance, but rather make sure that they're not collecting in two different states and therefore wasting federal funds.
Correct. So when an individual, let's go back a little bit. The procedure in which someone would collect general assistance in Pennsylvania, they would have to show, I guess, proof of residency, some form of receipt from wherever they may be living, or lease, or mortgage. At that time, wouldn't the other states be already contacted?
Currently there is no requirement that the other state be notified. So like for Pennsylvania, if we had a person who was here and they showed their utility bill, which is actually usually one of the common forms of demonstrating residency, it would be a whole nother year until they are reauthorized, until their residency is checked again. So if they moved in 6 months, we would be paying 6 months worth of benefits while they could collect it in another state because they're starting to establish residency in the other state. This is why we want to have this cross communication, both receiving information from other states when a Commonwealth resident leaves and goes there, as well as providing it to other states. Now, if the other state chooses not to end that person's public assistance that they're collecting in that state, they can do that. But we're trying to set up a system where we're sharing information and getting information from other states. And that's why I said this is the first step in an interstate compact, which would result in that sharing of information.
And I guess I'm going to close with this. One of the, I think the unintended consequences with a piece of legislation like this is sometimes there's the other states who may still be issuing some form of check to the individual. The individual is moving to Pennsylvania, and then somehow that individual is now caught up in the fact they're not receiving any funding here because the other state may have sent the check. They may not have cashed a check or anything with the check, but due to the fact that now that we're sharing this information and New York says, well, we sent, the check down to this individual and then we stopped their services here, that may have an unintended consequence to that individual because now they may not receive any income that they desperately need. And I'm always kind of cautious when we're talking about modifying the welfare code due to the fact that most of the individuals who are receiving welfare are those who are most vulnerable. So I'm somewhat cautious about looking at the system and potentially stopping someone's services here because of the state may have not, terminated their benefits at the other state.
There is no ability under this statute to stop someone's benefits, though. That is, I understand where the concern is, but under the way it's written currently, you're not allowed to stop the individual's benefits.
Thank you.
Again, if I am hearing this correctly, we're trying to codify something that Department of Human Services is trying to do internally. So I really don't see this as a burden. It does address the underlying concerns of fraud, waste, and abuse and try to minimize that to make sure that that money goes to those truly in need here in Pennsylvania. Representative DeLisio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. Is this currently the practice of DHS? Currently?
That is my understanding, yes.
Has it been the practice of DHS?
I would have to confirm again with our wonderful legislative liaison, but I think he told me it's within the last 2 or 3 years that they've started doing this. It was a recent development.
So it is the practice. Thank you. You talk about an interstate compact. Does the interstate compact language require this to be codified by the states who are participating in the compact?
The language of the compact would address the based on statute, not based on internal policy, as the interstate compact is currently written. That which is in statute, not which is in regulation.
So do we have the language of the interstate compact? If this in fact is a law that's supposed to be in compliance with the compact, I haven't seen any such language for the compact.
The language is, as we're working with other states, the language hasn't been made publicly available yet.
So the language hasn't been made available yet we're developing legislation to respond to a compact that hasn't been written.
This is and if I may represent Delicio, this is the first step that we have to take in being a member of this compact, is actually codifying this part of the law. And so I have been working in addressing this legislation as a form of a compact for other states to be aware of it. I actually have what I've been drafting and working on here with me today. It has not been introduced because it's dependent upon other states as well. So we have to adopt our own before, and if this were to be amended, it would completely change this legislation. That's why we have to adopt this first in order to move forward with an interstate compact.
I appreciate the explanation. Again, I haven't seen the language, so I'm taking somebody's word for it. I'm a very old manager. I inspect what I expect. So I appreciate the explanation. If I had had the chance to read that before this, perhaps it would have influenced how I read the language. What is the magic about the last 5 years, as opposed to 3, as opposed to 2, as opposed to any other number?
5 years is the length of time that people can collect TANF, temporary assistance for needy families, and so over 5 years would be the time that they would have been collecting in another state, typically for what they'd qualify for.
So it says the last 5 years and in which they have collected a form of public assistance. So if they've lived in other states in that 5-year window but have not collected any type of assistance, they are not required to disclose. Is that correct?
The language is intended to be both. A Democratic executive director and I discussed this, I think it was actually either this morning or late Sunday, that this could be read both ways. And at this time, we decided to not do the technical amendment here in committee, and that we would be considering it on second consideration on the floor.
So what is the intent?
The intent is both, that they both lived in another state within the last 5 years and collected public assistance. So it would be only a state in which they collected public assistance they'd have to disclose on the application.
You had mentioned earlier if they change states somewhere in between authorizations, they can possibly continue to collect or possibly collect in both states. So if they move out of PA, we will not know that they have moved out of PA, or is there a requirement currently in practice that if they move out, they're required to disclose that?
My understanding is there's no requirement to report back to the state that they're leaving when they collect assistance in the other state. This is why it already is internal policy for DHS to share this information with our surrounding states.
And then my last question, thank you, Mr. Chairman, has to do with this $5 million per month. I'm not clear on those numbers or what is being said when they said this is $5 million a month that's going out of state, or what that reference was. If you can explain that, please, one more time, clearly and slowly.
Yes.
Representative Kaufer.
Yeah, Representative Delicio, in the Auditor General's report, which I believe was in the packet that was distributed to you, in it I have it broken down via the state. This is directly from the Auditor General's report, that we have documented evidence over the course of 1 month in the May 2010 that we have over $5 million spent outside the state of Pennsylvania from EBT benefits. Now, a lot of that is from people who might be working in another state and buying something, but we have, for instance, over $250,000 spent in Florida, $139,000 in North Carolina, $120,000 in Virginia, and it has the last 2 pages are a full breakdown of that Appendix A of out-of-state EBT transactions for the month of May 2010, which totaled over $5 million in one state.
So
in 1 month, I apologize.
So that's dollars spent out of state. The way it was initially presented, I apologize, I heard as if they were residing in another state, collecting these benefits while residing in another state, and we, in fact, were the payer of those benefits. I mean, unless we're going to require people to stay within the boundaries of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we will see EBT dollars spent outside of the Commonwealth. And what percentage of the $5 million represents, $5 million is a large number. Any person listening to this would be like, wow, $5 million is a lot. What's the total number of benefits on a monthly basis that $5 million represents? What percentage of that amount? Do you happen to know that?
The $5 million is the total amount. At the
Right.
time when this audit was being done, the DPW, currently DHS, actually prevented the auditors from receiving this information to actually find what would have been fraudulently used. And that's actually in this audit report, that they were not forthcoming. And if I can read page 3, which is in your packet. However, during the course of this audit, management at DPW abruptly ceased cooperation with their auditors and denied further access to documentation. What follows is based on information we gathered prior to DPW ceasing cooperation. So unfortunately, we weren't able to find out what was fraudulently done using a forensic audit because the information was blocked from DPW and DHS.
Well, I appreciate all the discussion here today. I don't think anybody in this room would support a fraudulent use of taxpayer money, but I just don't think this legislation, as it's currently drafted, is something I can get behind at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Licio. And just to further clarify, the auditor's report is very clear. Pennsylvania recipients out-of-state use of Pennsylvania EBT cards to withdraw benefits in certain distant states or territory. So there's a problem. There's definitely a problem. Do we need additional details? Perhaps. Yes, Representative Daley.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the audit was, Chairman Fabrizio said that the audit was done before Act 22 of 2011. And so we understand that the DHS is doing an electronic checking for this information. So were they doing that at the time of the audit?
No.
Okay, so improvements have been made by the department since the audit.
That is correct. They have changed their internal policy, and
Okay.
we are attempting to codify their internal policy.
All right. But DHS is opposed to this legislation, is my understanding. And we've received a letter from Community Legal Services in Philadelphia that says that this bill is duplicative of existing fraud prevention efforts. Applicants are already asked to disclose if they're receiving benefits in other states at the time of the application. And in addition, DHS shares enrollment data with other states electronically as part of the federal SNAP system to prevent issuing benefits to someone who might be receiving benefits elsewhere. People who are flagged as receiving benefits elsewhere do not become eligible in Pennsylvania until they provide proof to DHS that they have notified the other states that they want their cases closed. And because DHS already is quite aggressive about ensuring that applicants and recipients aren't receiving benefits in multiple states, Community Legal Services does not believe that HB 1322 will have much impact on individuals, but that rather the impact is going to be on DHS. And I think any of us who have district offices, which is most of us sitting up here obviously, have probably experienced delays that constituents get when contacting DHS. So it does seem like they have a full workload, but it also seems that they're already doing what is needed to be done in order to address any issues of fraud. So changes have been made, not codified, I understand, but
Right.
they have been made in their practice. And so I'm not really sure what impact this ends up having. In addition, besides this, what do we call it? The Interstate Compact, which some of us don't really have very much information on. So is there any response to that? Because I'm not really sure why, it's not really clear to me why we're doing this legislation at this time.
I think it's just merely a codification of current practice and making sure it's in statute. But Representative Kaufer?
Yes, in order to create an interstate compact based on this, it needs to be codified in the law that we will be informing other states. As such, the idea of the compact is that other states will do the same, that they will inform us. You're mentioning about the different assistance offices and with doing their jobs and whatnot. In our most recent audit, actually, 30 out of the 32 county assistance offices that were done via the audit from our Auditor General actually had a failing grade of actually enforcing what was already law. I have a list of them if you'd like to see them as well. That came out in 2014.
I would like to see it, but I also, we also hear that staff has been cut in DHS, and I'm pretty sure that the cases that they've managed haven't been. So I'll take a look at that audit for myself. The other question I had is, we have notes here that general assistance ceased to exist on August 1st, 2012. And so one of the things I've learned since being here is that the words matter in the bills, and this bill does refer to general assistance. So is that an issue, or is that going to be an issue? Or is that not general assistance in uppercase?
It's
Yeah, I believe that was to define actually the term of what general assistance was in order to clarify between general assistance and medical assistance. I believe they're in two different parts of the law now. Subsection E of Title 55 is assistance other than medical assistance, which is where this bill falls under Section E of that code. Title 55, Section F is actually medical assistance. So it was to clarify the difference between the two.
All right, thanks.
Representative Brown. And let me recognize the presence of Representative Topol, who will be added to the master roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that, I have two questions, one very brief one. Under verification requirements of residency, I see that a person must produce rent receipts, mortgage payment receipts, utility receipt, bank account, or enrollment of children in local schools. If a person is homeless, how would verification be accepted?
That's existing statute. We didn't make any changes to that. That's, as the law is written right now, that is the requirements. So we didn't make any changes to that.
Yes.
Are you aware of folks that cannot provide this? How? Because I know that people who don't have these items are receiving because they're homeless and don't have them. So how are we accepting that?
I will have to confirm with DHS on how we establish it. It's now every 12 months they need to establish that they are residents of the Commonwealth, and whether they're doing that through utilizing a homeless shelter or, however they do enroll their children in school, even if they are homeless. I would assume that DHS has a process to assist them. So it would mirror that.
Representative Brown, just to clarify on that, my bill does not change that. My understanding is with certain homeless, I've heard this on the local level, that they actually can collect from the county assistance office if needed, if they don't have a stable home. I believe that is something that our caseworkers do on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you for updating me with that information. My other question is, you mentioned that the spending in other states. And to me, it seems like a simple answer, solution to this. If you know that people are spending in those states, you know who they are, why don't we put a process in where we send a requirement for re-verification, that if you're spending so much in North Carolina for the last 3 months, and you need to come back and recertify that you are eligible for these benefits that you haven't used. Is that something that we've looked at?
I believe that's what the intent of this legislation is to do, but we would need forensic auditing in order to present that. Right now, we're only aware of the actual dollar amount spent. At the forensic auditing, we can't actually, I don't believe we can actually confirm who the individual is themselves.
There's also no limitation on interstate travel. So if an individual lives here in the Commonwealth, but moves from job site to job site and has a current job, 3-month job in North Carolina, but is still eligible for public assistance here, we don't necessarily want to require them to come back to to recertify. But I mean, it's certainly something I'd be more than happy to look into and work with your staff on.
Seems like a letter from an employer. It would be an easy fix for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could. Oops, sorry.
Yes.
Didn't realize.
I do know the minority chairman wants to make a motion, but Representative Kaufer.
Yeah, just to clarify exactly what this is doing, this doesn't create any additional burdens for the individual applying. And in the past, this is just a way of codifying the cross-check to result in an individual's eligibility, which is already in regulation, trying to codify this as part of our welfare code. And this is the first step in moving towards that interstate compact. More specifically, this bill adds just a few lines into our legislation. And if you read the bill itself, this is exactly what it does, is all individuals applying for general assistance must disclose in their application all states in which they've resided in the last 5 years and in which they collected a form of public assistance. And secondly, DHS must notify the other states of the change in residency of the applicant. I know we've talked about a lot of things, but really this, I don't believe this is a controversial issue, although it has become one slightly of some of the periphery of what this legislation does. But this is just to create interstate, taking steps forward to make sure that we're working with our surrounding states to root out welfare fraud and abuse. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Sidebar here for a moment. We've had a little sidebar here to agree to a verbal technical amendment, which is permissible under the rules of when both chairs are in agreement. So we need to make sure the understanding is crystal clear. We'll be suspended for just a moment.
We are, which is, it's overreach, and, you gotta say, you know what, not gonna.
Okay, we're ready to go back to the business of the Health Committee. We do have a verbal agreement by the sponsor, the bill in chief, and the two chairmen, and Whitney will explain the verbal agreement and its intent.
If everyone would turn to page 2 of the bill, we'll begin at line 7. The amendment will, starting with general assistance, with the amendment agreed to by the chairs, the line will now read, general assistance applicants shall disclose in their application all states in which they have resided and which they have collected a form of public assistance in the last 5 years. The intent of this is to clarify that the individual needs to both reside in the state and have collected assistance in the state within the last 5 years.
Thank you. All in favor of this
Aye.
verbal amendment, this rare verbal amendment, agreed to by the chairs, will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Bill is amended. We will now take the, we're going to take a roll call on the bill in chief as amended. When you're ready, Gina. Yes.
Yes. Cox?
Yes.
Day?
Yes.
Barrett?
Yes.
Hahn? Kaufer?
Yes.
Krieger? Lawrence? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Phillips Hills and Coxey, yes. Schemmel?
Yes.
Topol? Yes. Toohill? Yes. Hopper?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Chairman Fabrizio?
No.
Representative Boyle?
Yes.
Representative Brown? No. Daley?
No.
Dawkins?
No.
Delicio? No. Kinsey?
Proxy, no.
Matsey? Yes. Mullery? Yes. And Schlossberg?
Proxy, no.
Thank you, Gina. The bill passes. Congratulations, Representative Kaufer. This is Representative Kaufer's first bill, by the way.